Y'all, I just got off the phone with my daddy and I'm like, wow, because it is so crazy how quickly our history can be forgotten. Like, it's insane, right? So, for those of y'all who are from the Detroit area, then of course you know about the city of Dearborn, right? And for those of y'all who are not from the Detroit area, you may have still heard of the city of Dearborn because it's known for being the city outside of the Middle East with the most Middle Eastern people living in it, right? That's what it's known for today, right? But would you believe what the city of Dearborn was on in the 1980s? Okay, now mind you, I didn't say the 1880s or the 1780s. No, I said the 1980s. This I wouldn't even call this the past. This is the present day, right? Like, y'all, let's get into this. So I could sit here and tell you all what my dad said, but of course y'all gonna be like, he could have just made that up. So I'm gonna read to you all from the website Accountability for Dearborn. This is what the city of Dearborn put out, right? Racism in Dearborn overview. Dearborn was segregated by design, a status that was expressly upheld by leadership. Dearborn was originally established as a white settlement designated by Henry Ford as a community for his white workers. Dearborn's levels of policing trace back to our city's segregationist roots. Police during this time were expressly instructed to harass black families. Up through 1948, it was standard practice for homes in Dearborn to incorporate racial housing covenants in their property deeds to prevent the homes from being sold to anyone who wasn't white. In 1963, 400 Dearborn residents rioted because they thought a house in Dearborn had been sold to a black family. The police were present but did not intervene. The 1967 uprising in Detroit informs current attitudes towards policing, safety, and Dearborn's relationship to our neighbors to our east. Former Mayor Orville Hubbard instructed police officers to shoot looters on sight. Read more about the comparison between the response to the events of 1963 and 1967. In 1971, Dearborn residents fought against integrative busing programs and were part of a regional movement to prevent school integration in Michigan. Dearborn remains segregated to this day. Despite its proximity to Detroit, only 4% of Dearborn's residents identify as Black or African American. Despite this small percentage of Black residents, more Black people are cited and arrested in Dearborn than white classified people. Anti-Black groups in Dearborn have used government action to restrict access to Dearborn, perpetuating segregation through legal mechanisms. In 1986, a petition-initiated ballot measure was passed and approved by the Dearborn electorate to restrict use of Dearborn parks to Dearborn residents. This move was identified by many groups as an attempt to prevent Black visitors restricted to spending money in Dearborn. In 2004, a petition-initiated ballot measure was passed and approved by Dearborn electorate to mandate a minimum staffing for Dearborn's police department. In 2016, Live Lounge's liquor license was revoked shortly after the venue began to attract a primarily Black clientele. Attorneys suspect that the move was racially motivated. Now, I had never heard of this, okay? On June 22nd, 2000, Dennis Richardson, a private security guard at Fairlane Mall, murdered Frederick Finley by strangulation over allegations that Finley's daughter had stolen a bracelet worth $4. And of course, can you guess what race Frederick Finley was? Of course he was Black. So let's go a little bit more into detail of that. His name was Frederick Finley. And mind you, this is also on the Accountability for Dearborn website. I just went to a different section of it. On his day off, he took his family shopping at Fairlane Shopping Mall. 5 security guards forcibly detained Finley's 11-year-old stepdaughter, accusing her of shoplifting a $4 bracelet. When Finley intervened, 3 guards threw Finley to the ground and handcuffed him, while 1 guard held his knee on the back of Finley's neck. The same guard then used a chokehold to restrain Finley, already handcuffed, until Finley died of asphyxiation. No security guards were arrested. After several hours of investigation by Dearborn PD, police interviewed no members of Finley's family that day. It took a massive protest of 7,000 people outside the mall demanding justice before 1 guard was charged with manslaughter a month after Finley's death. The lone criminal charge was eventually dismissed by a district court judge in Dearborn. Like, are we serious? Now, I'm going to read an article that was written in the Los Angeles Times on January 2nd, 1986. by James Risen. When Orville L. Hubbard, the outspoken segregationist mayor and flamboyant political boss who ruled this overwhelmingly white industrial city for more than 3 decades, died in 1982, the town's new leaders hoped that Dearborn's reputation for racism would be buried with him. But now it seems that Hubbard's ghost is bent on coming back to haunt Dearborn's 90,000 residents. An ordinance designed to keep non-residents out of Dearborn's parks, approved by the city's voters in November, has opened old wounds between Dearborn and its predominantly black next-door neighbor, Detroit. The vote, following an apparently racially motivated grassroots petition drive to get the issue on the ballot, has sparked a court challenge of the ordinance and a massive boycott of Dearborn stores by Detroit's inner-city blacks. Businesses, especially those at Dearborn's regional shopping center, Fairlane Town Center, have been caught in the middle because they have traditionally relied heavily on black customers. With few major stores remaining in the blighted inner city, Detroit residents are forced to travel to the suburbs to shop. Black leaders with memories of Hubbard's era still fresh in their minds charge that the park's ordinance is designed to keep Detroit blacks out of Dearborn. They see it as a product of an effort to create an updated, subtle form of segregation in the Detroit area, a system that, if successful, would allow inner-city blacks to shop in suburban stores, but restrict them from enjoying the parks in towns where they spend their dollars. Leaders of a civil rights coalition formed to fight the ordinance are vowing to continue their boycott until Dearborn officials agree not to enforce the ordinance, pending a court ruling on the law's constitutionality. They also help to use the Dearborn boycott as a catalyst to spark a nationwide fight against other ordinances or more informal practices in white suburbs around the country that they say are designed to inhibit inner-city blacks from using municipal services and facilities or from frequenting suburban residential or shopping districts. We're not dealing with the Jim Crow of the 1950s here, says Joe Madison, a national director for voter education for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, who is helping to coordinate the Dearborn boycott. We're dealing with James Crow Esquire, Jim Crow's first cousin, a more sophisticated segregation for the 1980s. In Dearborn, the racist legacy of Hubbard, Dearborn's strongman mayor from 1942 through 1977, is widely seen as the main reason that this blue-collar city, home to Ford Motor Company's world headquarters and some of its biggest manufacturing plants, is still almost completely segregated. Arabs and other ethnic groups now account for a significant percentage of Dearborn's population, but the latest census figures show that Dearborn has just 83 black residents, less than 0.1% of the population. To think that racism in Dearborn died with Orville Hubbard is ludicrous, Madison charged. Orville Hubbard didn't do things by himself, and this ordinance reflects the facts that remnants of racism still exist here. Meanwhile, outgoing Dearborn Mayor John O'Reilly, who unsuccessfully fought the ordinance during the election, is concerned that the park ban and the controversy surrounding it have damaged Dearborn's reputation. I think it has dredged up the past and is hurting our image, said O'Reilly, who left office last week when his term expired. But city officials believe it is unfair that Dearborn is getting so much negative publicity. There is segregation here just like there is in 95% of the white suburbs, ringing every city in the country, said Dwayne Jackson, Dearborn's Director of Citizen Resources and Information. To most Dearborn officials, the ordinance seemed to be a solution in search of a problem. Few inner-city blacks have ever used the parks, and the parks have never had a significant crime problem, city officials say. So when the issue was first raised at a city council meeting last summer, the council defeated the residents-only policy. But a Dearborn neighborhood group led by a former city council member mounted a petition drive that placed the issue on the November ballot, and the ordinance was passed over the protest of most of Dearborn's leadership, including O'Reilly, his chief of police, and the Chamber of Commerce. During the campaign, the mayor and the police chief stressed that the policy would be unenforceable without expensive new fences, park passes, and the addition of guards to check residents' passes. They warned that any less uniform entry policy would be unconstitutional, but the ordinance still passed by a vote of 17,790 to 13,976. But just a few weeks after the election in late November, Dearborn and the Civil Rights Coalition opposed to the ban appeared to have reached a compromise. The city agreed to sign a court injunction prohibiting it from enforcing the ban until the ordinance's constitutionality could be determined, and in return, the coalition agreed to call off a boycott of Dearborn stores in the middle of the Christmas shopping season. In December, however, O'Reilly refused to agree to the injunction when he discovered that the coalition was seeking to use the court case as a way to air allegations of civil rights violations by Dearborn. In the written complaint backing up its injunction filing, the group charged the city with upholding a tradition of racism. The complaint stated that historically, Dearborn has maintained itself as a virtually all-white city, and that throughout the years, public officials of the city of Dearborn have publicly stated that blacks were not welcome to reside in Dearborn. It went on to allege that the primary purpose of the ordinance was to exclude large numbers of black persons residing in the city of Detroit. O'Reilly complained that the coalition wanted to put the history of Dearborn on trial while contending that he had only agreed with the coalition to seek a quick court decision that would be limited to determining the constitutionality of the ordinance without dredging up Orville Hubbard. O'Reilly acknowledges that the neighborhood group that got the ordinance on the ballot may have had racist motivations, but he does not believe that all of the voters were being racist by simply agreeing to keep their parks to themselves. So he and the other city officials have insisted that the issue of race be kept out of any agreement. In response, the NAACP and its allied groups charged O'Reilly with reneging on their agreement. If the mayor was surprised that we raised the issue of race in the court documents, he must have been living in a cave since November, said Howard Simon, executive director of the Detroit branch of the American Civil Liberties Union, which is working with the NAACP and the coalition. After their failure to reach a settlement with the city, the coalition announced just before Christmas that its boycott will resume. Since then, no negotiations have been held, and both Dearborn and the coalition say they still see no possibility for a compromise. Because of the boycott, sales at many Dearborn businesses plunged, and businesses began urging the city to seek a new settlement. It's killing my business and the rest of the mall, said Richard Spector, manager of the Sundance shoe store at Fairlane Town Center. On a good Saturday, our mall is 40% black, and now there are hardly any here. We've definitely lost business, added Ann McDonald, manager of the Tannery West, a leather goods store at Fairlane. We've even gotten calls from black customers asking if they can mail in their layaway checks for items they've already ordered because they don't want to enter the mall at all. At the same time, the legal challenge of the Dearborn ordinance, now awaiting action in Wayne County, Michigan Circuit Court, could also affect other suburbs around Detroit because the case could help determine whether municipalities have the right under Michigan's Constitution to limit the use of their public facilities to residents. O'Reilly is still confident that Dearborn will win any court battle, arguing that a city has a right to give preferential treatment to its residents. I think the ordinance per se is constitutional, he said, and I think a city should be able to prioritize its services for its residents. Otherwise, if everybody could use everything a city had to offer, you would have chaos. Something that I've said on YouTube all the time is that racism has not changed. The only thing that has changed is the language surrounding it. So instead of the city of Dearborn voting to say, oh, we don't want any black people in our public parks, instead they voted to say, oh, only residents of the city can come to our public parks. Well, the city is only 0.1% black. So, like, what exactly are you saying here, right? But then this is the other thing. Once black people said, okay, well then we're boycotting Fairlane. We're not coming to your city to shop if we can't sit in the parks, right? Suddenly that tune changed. Suddenly they were trying to come to an agreement. Okay, well, can you postpone the boycott and we'll, try to see about the constitutionality of it, whatever, right? And then the store owners and stuff in Dearborn, they weren't saying, oh, this is wrong. We shouldn't target black people because this is bad. No, they were saying we shouldn't target black people because we need their money. We don't actually care about you all oppressing black people as long as we're still getting their money. And I hope that black people are paying attention to this, because something I've said time and time again is that these people need us to be a permanent underclass in this country. I've said that before and it remains true. Now, this is my thing. One of those things I just read, I forget which one, made the point. Oh, black people from Detroit were forced to go shop in the suburbs because there were no stores in Detroit. Now, do you think that there were no stores in Detroit just because black folks are lazy and those other folks work so much harder and so and so and so? Is that what you think? Because I bet if I sat here for 5 minutes, right? I could find the loans that were given to people to start small businesses. And I bet that I'd be able to see that black people were denied those loans at rates that other people were not denied, right? Now, they did that to destroy our businesses post Jim Crow. But take it back a couple decades. Go back to Jim Crow, right? When white folks were talking all that crap about segregation, oh, we don't want black people around us, so and so and so, yada, yada, yada. We said, okay, we'll start our own cities, our own towns. We'll open our own businesses and, you know what I'm saying, take care of each other, right? And white people immediately realized, oh, shit, they need us. First of all, they need us to spend money at their stores. They need us to work certain jobs and stuff. They need us quite literally. So back then, what would they do? They would come to our towns and burn them down, quite literally, right? So back during Jim Crow, they would be in your face with it. They burn your town down, kill everybody in there, right? But Fast forward a couple decades, and like I said, nothing has really changed. They still make sure that you can't open a business, but they changed the language around it. Now, you got to apply for a loan, and we can't give you the loan because of ABC or XYZ. So the language around it has changed up, but the result is still the same. After slavery, white people talked a bunch of crap. Go back to Africa. We don't want to be around y'all, so and so and so. So we said, okay, bye. We started moving up north. We don't want to be around y'all either, right? And at first they was like, yeah, forget about them niggers, so and so and so. But then they immediately realized, who about to do all the work? Because we lazy as hell. And then they put forth a bunch of laws trying to restrict black people from moving north. I kid you not. If somebody can tell me what the name of it is or something, please drop it in the comments, please, right? Because my point again is this. These people might talk a lot of shit, right? Like in 1986, they put this on the ballot. Oh yeah, keep non-Dearborn residents out of Dearborn parks, right? But then they immediately realized right after they need us. They need us to go to their stores and put money into their communities. They rely on us. That's why they have to make sure that we don't have shit, so that we have to spend our money with them. Then this is the crazy part, y'all. This is the most insane part of it all, right? If a black person even has the audacity to utter a single complaint, to say, man, as recently as 1986, they were voting to keep black people out of their parks. In 2000, they was killing black folks and not even getting in trouble for it until a group of 7,000 of us came from Detroit to protest it. You know what I'm saying? This stuff is recent, right? This stuff is today. This stuff is not stop happening. If a black person even has the audacity to say, oh, this is kind of messed up, this state-sanctioned violence against black people, quite literally. Like they said, a group of 400 Dearbornian bandits, okay, because those were racist bandits. They got together to protest because they thought that a house had been sold to a black person. Like, quite literally. They got together to do that, and the police sat there and looked, right? Might as well have been a KKK meeting, and the police were quite all right with it. But those same police were told to shoot black protesters on sight when Detroit was having the race riots, right? The fact that this is literally state sanctioned, okay? And a black person can sit there and say, hey, this is kind of messed up. This is like y'all declaring war on us or something, right? These people turn right around to you. Oh, why the perpetual victimhood complex? What are you talking about? Wow, you guys always want to be a victim. That be the most confusing part to me. I sit here and I record YouTube videos about this stuff on a regular basis, right? And it's crazy because I could sit here and spend the rest of my life making videos on stuff just like this, and I never even get a drop of the bucket through it, right? And y'all will sit there and say, oh, wow, black people are always acting like they have it the worst and so and so and so. Can somebody tell me, realistically, let's be for real with ourselves, right? What group of people in America has gone through what black Americans have gone through? Tell me, please. Please, somebody drop it in the chat. I want to know. I want you to play in my face.